Peace, y'all. Peace, 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 peace. The troublemaker of the community is live. Welcome to the Israel Doctrine Show where he kicks nothing but trouble. Nothing but trouble. That's me. I keep up trouble. Well, all the so-called famous people in the community. Because the community has people in it that's not right. They're not correct. And nothing they stand for, none of that. Now, I'm going to welcome y'all to the show tonight. I'm finna go over here and start some trouble tonight. See, the Huddle is a very peaceful place. Try to be peaceful and respectful to people, but people don't want to be peaceful and respectful to the Huddle.
Gotta hate from inside the club. You can't hate from outside the club. All I am gonna say on that.
All right, peace, everybody.
All right, peace, peace. All right, hey, Judah.
It is an art to it. You can set people up, set traps. You know what I'm saying? Y'all remember Vocab Malone when he had his debate? If y'all notice, he did very, very well because he learned from the beating I put on him. It made him a stronger debate. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, no, literally, he knew how to finish, go strong all 3 rounds. When that Q&A came, he went for the jugular. You know what I'm saying? You know when the alligators grab an animal and they drag it in the water and do the death roll. You know, he had homeboy there saying, I don't know.
And see, Judah, that's why my top 3 is Jabari. Then I put Nepal second, and then I go Captain Tazariak because they got the 3 coldest debate strategies that I've seen people come with. Now, it's some other people that have some great information. It's just the strategies. A lot of people don't got the strategies, but them 3 right there, they know how to drown you.
Damn. Okay.
That's for sure.
Israel Doctrine, what it is, bro?
I want Jabari.
Man, come on, man. You can't even get through.
I love me some Israel, man. I love me some Israel.
Y'all can do what
you got to get through Israel Doctrine. You got to go through a lot of people.
Give me Tazariak. Give me one of your heavy hitters. You won't even let me get Judah.
Well, Judah Naz is a heavy hitter.
Huh?
Judah Naz is a heavy hitter.
Okay, I'm saying this. You try to make me minor league. I told you I didn't ate all these guys up. They was looking for me. When they came to YouTube, they weren't even looking for you. All of them on my platform.
Well, you are 2-0 at your start right here. So you beat Chris Harris and you beat California Biz. So you 2-0 right now. You climbing the chart.
I want somebody to shut my mouth.
Baby Floyd Mayweather, huh?
I want somebody to shut my mouth. That means you got to go get one of your heavy hitters because everybody lightweight for as I'm concerned.
Judah's lightweight, you saying?
Everybody's lightweight for as I'm concerned.
Woo, talk your talk.
I love that confidence. That's why I love me some Israel Doctor. He ain't backing down for nothing. If people say he just likes to debate for no reason, this is what I noticed about Israel. He don't debate for no reason. If he see you got an opposing argument, he take it from anybody. If you going against what he say, he'll debate you on it. That's the bottom line.
Ain't running from nothing.
And I can rock with that.
So, Netter, I had to quickly come in. I would be remiss if I didn't. Israel Doctrine is not 2-0 over here. I love you, Israel Doctrine, but Devion gave you that work. Okay, don't forget Devion gave him that work, son, Netter.
That's right.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Oh, I didn't see that. It sound like 2-1. Sound like 2-1.
And then Israel Doctrine did
still a winning
Chris
record.
right after that.
It's still a winning record.
That's my record over here. But even with that, I call it a very biased because he went and got white Christians, right? Ku Klux Klansmen Christians, and you know all y'all black people hate the KKK and tried to make them like they was on my side. Like, I understand. I'm black, you black, they not on your side or my side. But he ran and got them, and that's
all right. Let me bring in Carlos Nigeria in the building. What up, brother?
Peace and salutations.
Peace, my brother.
Hold on. I don't think some people understood what Morpheus was doing earlier. When he was doing the court example, he was giving like a metaphorical example of the problem that was with the evidence. And that's the whole thing. The scholarly consensus is that, yes, there was a historical figure named Jesus, but it's a minimalist, meaning that there was a person named Jesus, no miracles, no virgin birth, no resurrection. None of that is part of the scholarly consensus. So when he was saying the way the evidence in the court of law, he's weighing the evidence the way a historian weighs the evidence, and all of the evidence is shaky. All of the evidence is problematic.
This is the problem with that. You cannot compare modern day science and modern day evidence to history back in, thousands of years ago. You can't do that because it was different laws and different rules back then. See? So you cannot compare today's laws to yesterday's rules and laws.
But how do you think they do history? Science progresses. History is the same. History is a form of like similar to science. The way they did history back in the days, it was hearsay. They went off, this person said this person said that. And like they're saying that the books were written based on oral tradition. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the scholarly consensus is none of them wrote those books. That's why I say according to Matthew, according to Mark, according to Luke, according to John. They like I was saying earlier, that didn't come in until 100 years after those books was written with Irenaeus. In 185, when he said that Papias said that Matthew and Mark wrote those books. So that was not attributed to them until 100 years after it was written.
So what about the fact that people was moved by the Holy Spirit to write? I'm not saying nothing against what you're saying, but how do that count into?
The scholarly consensus doesn't deal with the Holy Spirit. We're talking about historians and based on evidence. We don't have any evidence of a Holy Spirit.
I said was no historians around the right. Jesus was just a regular man that was doing what he was doing, and nobody seen him as nothing big when he was walking around. So who would be walking around writing scholarly papers on them and things of that nature? It don't make sense to me to go into that. But that's what happened when they brought scholarship into the debate arena with dealing with topics that they want to debate. Jesus is nothing about a historical person, but you could go to the Bible and deal with them, but people don't like the Bible.
But even if you go to the Bible, they're not eyewitnesses. None of them met Jesus. And that was another thing Morpheus was bringing up. There's no eyewitness accounts. Whether you in the Bible or non-biblical sources, there is not one single eyewitness account for historical Jesus.
Okay, I don't,
and that's the scholarly consensus.
I don't argue that. That's why I just asked a simple question: that how do you deal with the fact that they was moved by the Holy Spirit to write? Maybe it's a lie, maybe it's not a lie, but it should factor in your argument?
It's possible that it was moved to right, but at the end of the day, it was still men writing based on oral traditions, which is hearsay, stories that they heard, and that's what they jotted down. None of the eyewitnesses, the people who were actually there with Jesus, wrote anything about him. Paul wrote, what, in the 50s? Paul never met Jesus. Paul came from Revelations. Paul didn't meet Jesus. Paul met James, the brother of the Lord, and Peter, Cephas.
So Peter never wrote on Jesus?
Can I?
Go ahead.
Can I? I'm sorry, brother. Thank you for letting me jump in because I'm going to be out in and out. But let me just ask him a couple questions. So, do you realize that we have historical figures? I've been bringing the person up for a while, and a lot of people do. It's very common. We have historical figures who we know existed, but no one. They've been written of very much later than when they actually lived. I'll throw out, of course, I've said this before, Alexander the Greek. I don't say the Great. You realize no one met him, and he was written of centuries later. No one met him, but we know he's real. So for you to say no one met Jesus, which that can be debated, by the way, no pun intended again, because we will be debating it tomorrow. Do you know that there are historical figures that no one has actually let me rephrase that. The people who wrote about him, they didn't meet him. Are you aware of that?
You got people who wrote about him hundreds of years later, and you got contemporaries that wrote about him. With Alexander the Great, we got coins, so there are attestations to Alexander the Great. You got the generals of Alexander, who what was it? Ptolemy. They buried him in Egypt, and then the body got moved later on after Egypt got invaded and ransacked.
Okay, let me ask you again. See, you went all over the place, but that's okay. Let me get you back on track. I'm going to ask you again. Do you realize that there is no one who was contemporary? That was wrong what you said. No contemporary wrote about Alexander the Greek, but we still worldwide say that is a valid, that is a real historical person. You know that no one was contemporary with him, yet we know he's real. In fact, it was about 400 years later when he was written of, yet we still say no one disputes the existence of him. Are you aware of that? I didn't ask you about coins, and I didn't ask you about Ptolemy. And Ptolemy never wrote anything. I mean, let me rephrase that. The information that we use today to validate the existence, that is the foundation of validating the existence, the historicity of Alexander the Greek. Those people, those two particular people, wrote about him 400 years later, so they were not contemporary. Are you aware of that?
I've read Dr. Carrier's book, and he has a detailed list concerning the attestations. Yes, concerning the attestations with Alexander the Great.
And are there any contemporary attestations? Because he would probably get on if he heard you before you answer. He's going to say you're wrong. I'm just going to throw that out there. Show me in his book where he says there's a contemporary of Alexander the Greek that wrote about him. I want to see that.
I got his book. I have to go back through it.
She about to drown
there
you.
Isn't one.
Gonna drown me because we still
there
got
isn't one.
archaeological
Go get the information. Source up. Because now you're doubling down instead of if you're not sure, you should say, you know what? I'm not sure. Let me check. No, there is no contemporary of Alexander the Greek who said, okay, and then this is Alexander the Greek that we have. It was 400 years after he died, approximately, maybe 450. Now, if you're talking about coins and, back, you brought up Ptolemy, that's a whole different conversation. You're over here saying we need contemporary. The thing that I'm saying is we don't only need contemporary attestations to prove the validity of the historicity of a character. That is great. That would be ideal. But historians don't say, well, no, I don't see anybody who lived around the time he lived and wrote about him. Well, this guy didn't exist. It doesn't work that way. That's what I'm trying to say to you, my friend. We need to stop this. We need to stop this whole when it comes to Jesus. And then I'm going to keep going back to church hurt. Yes, I am. Until you prove that you're not church hurt. Because With everyone else, it's okay. With every other historical figure, it's okay. When we get to Jesus, oh, we need to see. I need somebody who stood at the cross and wrote about him. I need to see it right now. I need a guy who sat down with him when he was doing all that stuff. I want to see it. No, why? That's not how history. That's not how historians work. Again, that would be ideal. That would be great. But it doesn't say, oh, because we don't have that, the information's not accurate. The information's not valid. Jesus is not real. Jesus never existed. So that's the point I'm making. Go back and double check what you read from Richard Carrier, because I highly doubt that Richard Carrier said those who wrote about Alexander the Greek were his contemporaries. I highly doubt it.
Well, I could double check the contemporary part, but still, the coins is archaeological evidence that says that there was an Alexander the Greek or Great, whichever way you want to call him, Alexander of Macedonia. But with Jesus, we don't have any archaeological evidence for him.
We do. We have we have bone boxes. See how I can do this? Now watch this. I don't mind the coin. I'll go with it. Sounds great. Now I'm gonna match your coin with a box of human bones that say this is the brother, basically James, the father, Joseph, the brother James. Okay, we have a box of bones that were found. They weren't found anywhere. They were found in Jerusalem. All right, you get what I'm saying? So now I matched your coin with the box of human remains. Your turn.
Can I speak?
Go ahead, Reggie.
Can I speak? Okay, so if this was a debate where people would take points from, right, it would be problematic. So the problem is like um, uh, to say that Alexander the Greek did not have contemporaries that wrote about him, that would be problematic because there are about 5 sources of people also in history who actually wrote works about him. I would I would be careful with that, and I would continue hint hint hint, because if you bring that up and then it's an untruth, then it hurts the rest of the arguments. I don't discount a historical Jesus. I don't. I don't, for the reasons that the best scholars say. So if you want a list of contemporaries of Jesus, I mean contemporaries of Alexander from Macedonia, I could give that to you, right, with sources.
Okay.
But I would be careful. I would only stick with things that are absolutely true, and then you can come back, to it. I'll stop.
Yeah, let me make myself clear, Reggie. Thank you. I'm saying the foundation of the historicity, where a lot of the information comes from, it's centuries later. Now, yeah, in the heat of the moment, excuse me if I may have misspoke. Whatever information that is presented that you see may be written about Alexander the Greek during that time, such as I'll even use let's use Maccabees. The book of Maccabees, even there's a mention, and it is antiquity. It is ancient writing. I'm talking about the extent of who he is. You understand? I'm going to double down on that. But thank you, Reggie, for having my back. But I'm going to double down on it. I'm not talking about a mention of him like they play that game with. Well, that could have. Jabari plays this game. We don't know if that was the Jesus of the Bible, or I mean, he doesn't exactly say that, but that's the narrative that's pushed. I want you to show me a contemporary that is written extensively about Alexander the Greek, all about his life, who he is, not a mention of his name, not something that, oh, and there was this general named Alexander the Greek.
I can give you 3.
Arion. Okay, and they've written extensively about his life? Please go ahead.
Yeah. Arion, a Greek historian who wrote Anubis of Alexandria, is considered one of the most reliable sources of Alexander's campaigns. Arion's writing based his writings on accounts of Alexander's contemporaries such as Ptolemy and Aristobulus. Plutarch.
Wait. Hold on. The date. Give me the date, and then tell me that he wrote about his life, about Alexander the Greek's life.
Yes.
Give
It's
me the
500
date.
years later. It was 500 years
Give
later.
me the date. Give me the date. 500 years later it is?
Yes, I got it. I
What?
found it in Dr. Carrier's book.
For Arian,
Then
Yeah, they
why
said
is Reggie
Plutarch.
trying to say it was contemporary?
because they said this is what Carrier said. He said, in fact, our best historian of Alexander is Arian, who, though he wrote 500 years later, nevertheless employed an explicit method of using only 3 eyewitness sources, 2 of them actual generals of Alexander, who wrote accounts of their adventures with him. He names and identifies these sources, explains how he used them to generate a more reliable account, and discusses their relative merits. That alone is quite a great deal more than we have for Jesus, for whom we have not a
500 years
single named
later.
eyewitness source in any of the accounts of him.
Okay, and is that who you? I didn't hear Reggie say Arian. I would have been familiar with that. That's not the name that Reggie said, is it?
There's no, there's yes, so there's
Oh, you you said Arian, Reggie?
Arian, Plutarch, and there's
Okay, Plutarch and Arian. It was 400 to 500 years later. So no, you're again. I feel even strong. See, I'm humble enough to actually listen to think maybe perhaps you were coming in to show me something, Reggie. You're absolutely wrong. Those were, as you heard the brother, those are between 400 and 500 years later. So those are not contemporaries. Okay. So, but does it mean that? Wait, let me just park my car. There was a great lesson right here in this. Does that mean that information is not valid? No. Does that mean that information is discounted? Absolutely not. If you're going to be objective in your historical research and look for the truth instead of be biased and church hurt. So, as I said, 500 years later, Plutarch and Arian wrote about, I'm going to finish up. Plutarch and Arian wrote about Alexander the Greek. And we're talking about first century. We got people coming in here, including, I saw Morpheus saying, John is 9, it was 95. It's still first century. We got Mark. What is it? Okay, even if you say, I don't know where they got that from, that Mark isn't Mark, but Mark was what? 55 AD? I don't like saying BC. It always mixes me up. So there
Mark
is
is
my
70.
point. Okay, thank you. Well, then 70. Oh, thank you. It's not 450 and it sure ain't 500, right? So the point that I'm making is we don't have to worry about it specifically. We don't throw the whole baby out with the bathwater if we don't have sources that are contemporary. We just keep looking. We say, okay, well, this source is good. This source is okay. This source will work. I would like it to be a little closer in time, but hey, I'm not going to throw that away. I might need that later because what'll happen? This is, again, I'm just following what I see historians do. What they do is they say, let me hold on to that because I might see something, an independent attestation that might go along with that. So that'll be useful.
Can I?
I found a spot where he speak about the contemporaries in Nepal. He say we have mentions of Alexander the Great and details about him in several contemporary or eyewitnesses.
Okay. Well, I'll let you guys go back and forth about this. I made a good point, I think, to the ones who actually want to know. But
you don't want to hear the part about the contemporary sources?
Yeah, that you don't just need contemporary sources. You need sources of all different types. It would work. It would be ideal to have a contemporary source.
No.
Okay, he said we have mentions of Alexander the Great and details about him in several contemporary or eyewitness sources, including speeches of a Socrates and Demosthenes and Aeschines and Hyperides and Dionysius and the poetry of Theocritus, the scientific works of Theophrastus and the plays of Menander. So they all
let me ask you a
Alexander.
question. I'm gonna double down since you want to keep on getting beaten up. Let me ask you this. Can you prove that Socrates existed? Because you just use Socrates. This is how you guys play with the Jesus historicity. You just use Socrates to prove the historicity of Alexander the Greek. I need you to prove that, not just Socrates. I want you to go down that list and prove to me that those people actually existed. I think I made my point. I got a lot of stuff to do. I hope I see y'all tomorrow. Y'all can try to clean this up. You could try to clean it up, but I made a point. You're wrong. Go ahead, Reggie. You have all you want. I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna get off the panel.
Yeah, but that's not how we do it.
Wait. I don't want anybody to say I ran. What did you say, Reggie?
That's not how we do it, right? And Nepal, over talking, right?
I wasn't
And
over talking. That was my turn to speak.
well, you cut back in.
Oh no, I said I'm going to stay on the panel and listen to you.
All right. So give me a second, right? Because there's a list of at least 5 people that was contemporaries of Alexander the Great, since we want to talk about that, who actually wrote about him. The scholars that I mentioned later, right? They wrote about the scholars that were contemporaries. So
Oh, okay.
there, okay.
I'm going
So
to go ahead and leave. I thought you were trying to address me, but you're going to go into that. Y'all can listen to this, and
I
I'll listen as well. I'm going to excuse myself. Peace to you, Brother Reggie.
yeah,
I hope
okay.
y'all got
So
the real point.
to the
I made my
audience,
point.
to the
Yeah.
audience, right? To
Huh?
the audience, right? Okay, so on these oral debates is really, really fine, right? The next level is at the end of it, write a paper on it, right? And so what we do here is debates, and with a debate is what it is. You could actually win on on that type of information. But if you were to write something, you would have to write the pluses and the minuses with actual sources. To say that there are no contemporaries of Alexander the Great that wrote would not be a good argument. Now, that doesn't take away from what you're going to do in a debate, because I'm not arguing against you with the historicity of Christ. I'm not going to argue against you right now. What I am going to say is that the using Alexander the Great is even more difficult because of his campaigns that shaped the world, or plus or minus. So I'm only arguing, I'm only talking to you, not arguing with you, but discussing with you based on that. That would not be a good analogy, right? But that doesn't disturb your overall debate, which I am not going to disturb. Is that fine?
She's gone, Reg. I would like to ask a question.
Well, okay. Well, even so, if she's gone, so I didn't finish. Thank you for letting me know. But I'm telling the audience, right? Telling audience, if you have to be careful about using other people to help your point when you use another person and there is evidence, right? That becomes problematic because there is writing from those people. I'll stop for now.
Can I ask Reggie? Can I ask Reggie a question?
Yeah.
Some time ago, I spoke to Jabari. He was on a live feed, and I asked him, "Did the ancient Israelites ever existed?" And he confirmed that they existed. So I'm asking you, historically, have the ancient Israelites ever existed, and were they people of color? Historically, because you mentioned about Alexander. I believe Alexander existed. I believe he went to war with Darius, and I believe the Battle of Hell's Point, and I believe his father's battles, Philip the Macedonian. So I'm asking you, historically, did the Israelites ever existed, and were they people of color? The same way I asked Jabari.
Well, let me say this. Most of the world were in that area were people of color because of evolution and admixture, right? So most of the world was. How you identify them is less. You can less African, meaning Central Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, right? They were less because of the same reasons, because of evolution and where they were in the climate, right? But they were because of melanin. If melanin is you're talking about. So the second question, what was really the first question? I answered the second question.
Well, you mentioned about melanin and different people in a certain region. I'm asking you, did the ancient Israelites ever existed historically, and were they people with melanin in them? Were they so-called black people?
The second question I answered, did they exist? They how can I say, we put labels on terms, right? For example, if you want to call Hezekiah Israelite, right? we would need his writings to say that he was an Israelite, not what other people put labels on them. So we do know that there was an area. We know that the word seemed to have existed, but even some of that is because we have the Moshe Stela that talks about Omri and Israel, right? Israel. So we have the Moshe Stela, but the way we describe Israelites based on the Bible, that may not have been real. And we have the reason why is because we have Judah and we have Israel, right? We have Judah and we have Israel, and then the Assyrians, they attacked Israel and they removed those people. Later, we have the groups of people from Babylon that was from Judah, the southern kingdom that arrives, but that was how can I say, a separate group of people. The Israelite concept comes from the Torah, and you would have to tell me exactly when the Torah was written.
But I'm not sorry to cut you off. I'm not take the Bible out of it for a second. I'm sorry because you mentioned about history. We talked about Alexander, and I'm bringing even Rome into this. Are you saying that the history of Herod and the Roman Empire never existed? You saying that the history of the Roman?
That.
I'm asking. I'm not saying. I'm asking.
You're asking another additional question.
No, because
the Meropitan Stela talks about Israel, right?
Say it again. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part. Say it again.
Meropitan Stela talks about Israel, a group of people that you might say were the early groups of people that they took the name from, the real people, right?
Were these black people?
That's another question. That's another question. How we identify black, we have to drill down on that. I am only dealing with the Meropitan Stela and the Moshe Stela.
Wait, you're confusing me. I'm sorry.
I'm not confused.
Real quick.
I'm not confused.
Real quick. The Egyptians, were they black people?
The people that we call Egyptians, again, is a later term, right? Is actually later term. If you want to talk about the time period where the Greeks from Necrotis was in the period writing about that, right? They were more mixed groups of people. If you go back to the earlier periods, you can see by art and you can see by how they identify themselves that they were African people, and they would have been dark because of where they were in the sun and the climate. Yes.
So they were black people. So were the Ethiopians, were they black people?
There was no Ethiopia back then.
Again, these
I'm sorry.
These are Greek terms.
Ridiculous. He's not answering, and you keep asking them the same questions to get ridiculous.
Again, the Ethiopians, right? Which groups of people that you're talking about? You're talking about the place in northern Africa, or you're talking about sub-Saharan Africa? The Greek sources begin not with the place that we know as Ethiopia, but it begins with a kind of a word that describes these burnt-faced people.
During the time when the Ethiopians were black and when the Egyptians were black, were the Israelites black?
Okay. Again.
You spell nation, man. He don't like dealing with the black. You see that?
No, I know. I do. But to talk about blackness, you need a black reality. A black reality is when people identify themselves in relationship to black. With Kemet, you do have that, where they identify themselves by art, they identify themselves with the black bull, right? So they made black sacred. So you have a black reality in Egypt.
I'm gonna let you, the brother Israel. I'm gonna let you in a second. So the icons we see all over the world, the Russian icons and the icons that display Jesus and the prophets and the men of Israel as people of color, are those false or are those true?
Those are much later because of what you just said. Russia, right? Those are much later, right? So there at some point there may have been a black reality. For example, in Ethiopia, they began to paint Christ black, but originally he wasn't painted black, but later they had a black reality. So it's a cultural, it becomes a cultural thing, a cultural thing. They identify Christ with their people in Ethiopia, right? But that in a country called Ethiopia, or the state, the area called Ethiopia, but you do have to know that they were Christianized, right? They were Christianized. So again, writing writing is different than talking, because then you can at least source. And that doesn't mean that your sources are completely right, but you have enough sources to make your point. And this is not my show, so I did just want to say to Nepal, her analogy I would not use because it would hurt her good work on Alexander from Macedonia, right? That and that would hurt that that would hurt that that argument. And so don't use that in your debate. That's why we have these conversations. I'm just telling her, don't use that one on Jabari. Don't use that one. Use the fact. Use what Bart Ehrman says. Bart Ehrman is the top scholar of this area, right? Bart Ehrman is. His only big critiques are Richard Carrier, right? Imagine that. Jabari already beat, Jabari disagreed with Richard Carrier, right? Okay, well, Richard Carrier is Bart Ehrman's greatest kind of debater, but as far as writing, I think Bart Ehrman has made the biggest case because he identified James, the brother, right? James, the brother, and if Paul is right and the stories are right, you have James. Then you also have Thomas, right? You have family members that would make Jesus, I mean, not Jesus. Okay, for example, Tacitus doesn't call him Jesus. Tacitus calls him Christus. He's the founder of the Christians. He doesn't say his name was Jesus. He says his name was Christus, and he is the founder of Christianity. If I'm wrong, someone beat me up, right? But so all we can do is give the best evidence from the best scholars, unless we are a primary researcher. Nobody on how can I say? Nobody on any side is a primary researcher. At best, a secondary and tertiary kind of researcher on the subject, because you would have to read Greek, and you have to be on the ground, and you and do archaeology, right? Everything else that we got, we're just using our best kind of our best sources, right? And that's my well, look, I do have some training. I'm pretty good at what I do, and I do make good arguments, and so that's where it would have to go. So Richard Carrier, you would look at Richard Carrier's work, you would look at Bart Ehrman's work. You can compare them. You might see a debate between the two of them, and the consensus is that uh, that a person was a historical person. That's the consensus. Now you could poke holes. Jabari is great at poking holes at bad sources. Don't bring up bad sources to Jabari, because he will kill you on that, right? bring up your best sources. So I would say people would go to Bart Ehrman, who is the most notable on the historicity of Christ. Is that fair enough?
I would like to ask a question. Since everybody historical and stuff here, have they seen certain things? I'm not gonna ask. I don't really want to step on nobody's toes, but y'all know I am a butthole, a legitimate butthole. I'm an Aries. Ain't that right, Satinella? But if we was historians, we would have seen some historical stuff and we could be able to speak on it. That's why I asked it that way. I know y'all like, what is he talking about? But I'll just leave it like that.
Okay, well, getting back to historicity. So I see Gideon Yisrael talking about, I'm in the chat, I'm filibustering. I'm not filibustering. I'm actually giving you, I was first talking to Nepal about just guiding her, don't use that as a source. I mean, an argument. The second thing is I talked of notable scholars that like Bart Ehrman and Richard Carrier, and there's Wallace, right? Wallace doesn't argue against the historicity of Christ. He just argues against the textual sources, right? Maybe the textual sources are wrong, right? Or incomplete, right? Bart Ehrman gives the best. Bart Ehrman gives the best argument. So I don't know. I think that this guy is just trying to talk. Everything that I say, you can look up.
Anybody up here want to ask a question or hold a dialogue? Because if you don't, it's going to sit on this. You're going to look at the side chat and talk to the people.
I have another question if you don't have anything.
So I got a question when you get a chance, huh?
I'll get it. I'm sorry. I'll fall back then.
Now, I just got a quick question to Brother Reggie, because, you know, I respect Brother Reggie. I respect the panel, everybody on the panel. I would like to ask just a quick question. Brother Reggie, the great historian that you are, and the great...
Well, I'm not. I'm a good researcher.
Okay, well, the good researcher that you are, and or any historian that teaches history, what percentage, I will ask you, what percentage of the people you study or the people that you teach about have you actually not met? I would just ask that question first. What percentage would you say, honestly, what percentage would you say of all the history that you teach, what percentage of them have you not ever met or seen in your life?
Oh, more than 95%.
Okay, so that's what so I think he's gonna lose the debate simply based off the title of debate. Is the Jesus of the Bible a real person? Now,
well, how do you make the nexus between what you asked me and this? You didn't make the nexus.
The nexus, bro. The nexus.
You know, there's no proximity, there's no closeness. So that is not the argument, sir.
So, well, the reason why I make the argument, brother, is because so many people say, well, you know, this person or that person that we use as proof of historical Jesus, you say, well, that person never met him, or that person wasn't alive, you know, 50 years after he was dead and gone.
No, but that's not how we do it. Now we use the sources. So we collect the sources from people who specifically wrote about these individuals, right? We collect those sources. We do a lot of, Sanet is trying to get us into another level, but we do a lot of play here.